What's up, everybody? This is Courtland from IndieHackers.com, and you are watching Indie Hackers Office Hours, where I have experts and successful founders come on to talk to regular indie hackers about their business challenges and obstacles. Today, the guest is none other than myself. I'm the creator of Indie Hackers. I am a computer scientist from MIT. I did Y Combinator in 2011. I failed at more startups than most people have started. In 2016, I created Indie Hackers, which after 9 months, I bootstrapped to profitability and sold to Stripe, where I work on it today. So today I'm going to be talking to, it looks like 6 different people about their startups, and you guys are all over the map. But Harry, you're first. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're working on?
Hello, Indie Hackers. I am Harry, on the forum quite a lot. Great place to be. Currently not working on too much, just failed with another idea. So the next one, I got an idea, which is, I've put quite a lot of thought into actually. It's a gallery of marketing case studies, organized by section. Essentially, a lot of designers perhaps might be familiar with something like landbook.com or goodwebsite.design, where they showcase lovely design, and you can filter by type. So you might want like a modern design or a Stripe style design, and the landing pages which show up would be pages designed to look like that. So the idea I had would be a similar site to that. Perhaps if I share my screen, Courtland, is that all right?
Yeah, go for it. We can
showcase. Hopefully this works all right. Are we seeing goodwebsite.design?
There it is.
And I think the way it does its filters is quite nice. So you could look for, if you were looking to add some social proof to your site, press logos, for example. Here's a list of loads of great press logos, which sites have quite nicely designed. A lot of design is obviously copying, so I'm sure people just go on here and rip stuff off, which isn't really that bad, I don't think. So the idea would be kind of replicate this for marketing, I suppose. So instead of like social proof pricing CTAs, you'd have stuff like press, or you'd have stuff like SEO or referrals, and there would be examples of companies who had a great referral program, or for something like, I know a lot of companies use intercom quite inventively. So there could be like an intercom filter where it shows you maybe 3 or 4 companies which are using intercom in a slightly more inventive way than usual. So I think the idea would be, I think a lot of indie hackers might also have heard of Steve Shoga, the guy who behind refactoring UI. And I think he did something quite smart, where he kind of distilled design into these kind of bite-sized chunks, which he tweeted about. And instead of trawling through maybe a longer article, these case studies could be an easier way of visualizing what good marketing is. So my first question, Courtland, is if you were to launch this idea, how much would you build? Would you try and validate it, or would you plunge straight in? Would it be quite a quiet launch, that sort of thing?
Right. So there's a lot there. The first thing I got to ask before answering any of these questions is, what's your goal? Like, what do you want to be at the end of all this? What makes you want to even build something like this?
That's a good question. I think I remembered speaking to you a few months ago, and something which you said which stuck with me was work on something which you're happy to work on for maybe 5 years. And I think with some of my previous ideas, they were more like flash in the pan stuff. Like, oh, it was fun for a few months. But then it kind of got less fun when you launched it, and maybe you didn't have so many users. With marketing, I think it's a skill I've got. I'm really into it. I like reading about it. And it's something which, even if it didn't take off that much, I could see myself happily trawling out these kind of case studies or little pieces myself. And yeah, so I think slightly not answering your question, that's like the setup, but the answer to your question is, it's partly for me, and secondly, I'd happily play the long game, and maybe you start growing an email list and Twitter followers, and it turns into something more. Like, you could perhaps release a marketing book, or perhaps it turns a bit indie hackery, where like you end up having users being able to submit marketing content, and maybe there's a forum about marketing spun off it. That's, I suppose, my answer.
Okay, cool. So those are great reasons. It's cool to see that I said something and it had an impact. I stand by what I said. You should do things that you enjoy working on. You should serve customers that you enjoy talking to. You should build things that you like building. What you're building is really cool because you're going to learn from it too. Like in the course of putting together all these case studies, like I'm sure you're going to learn a lot. The same way I've learned a lot from indie hackers. Your first question was sort of around how I would go about like launching this and how I would sort of do the early stages of getting press to it. One specific thing you said was, would I do a quiet launch? And like, I'm a huge fan of the quiet launch. I don't like doing some huge flash in the pan, sort of rocket launch day one, because I think it's a waste, right? You're going to get all these users to your website, hopefully, and then you won't have really set anything up to know if they're going to have a good time or find what you're doing is valuable or collect them in any sort of email newsletter. And so I am a huge proponent of doing things slowly and making sure that what you're doing is actually working and it resonates with people. And so for you, I would do the slow roll, what Rob Walling calls like the staircase approach, which is you sort of take it one step at a time. And every time you go up one step, you should try to have in mind what the next 2 or 3 steps are that you're going to get to, and sort of the milestones you have to hit with the current step to get to the next one. So what you're doing is very, very similar to Indie Hackers. Like probably everything that I did to launch Indie Hackers is something that's like akin to what you could do. But there are like some differences. So one of the biggest differences is that like, from the sounds of it, it doesn't sound like you're going to be publishing stories so much as you're going to be publishing like very tactical case studies. Is that correct?
I think I haven't thought too much about the medium. I think something which refactoring UI did very well was that you could kind of see the whole thing from like a Twitter image. But that's because design is very visual. But it would be very cool if it wasn't so long form. So yeah, not necessarily stories.
Okay, so the thing that helped with Indie Hackers a lot is that it wasn't really just this one big bam, here's Indie Hackers and that's it. Like I had sort of a built-in mechanism where I could continually add to it forever. And so you think about the stair-step approach where you're like always walking up these stairs to get to the next level. Like what you're doing is essentially a content business, and content is brutal because it's like people just love novelty. Like people like to read new things, and this idea of evergreen content, like you put something on the internet and it gets traffic forever, like that happens sometimes. But the vast majority of the time, it does not happen that way. Like the vast majority of the time, you need some sort of mechanism to repeatedly get people to your site. And that can be SEO, that can be a newsletter, that can be producing new content and continually submitting it to Hacker News or Twitter or other websites. So if I were you, I'd think about like this entire idea through that lens. Like what are you going to be able to do to continually put out new content or get more people back to your website? And that's just going to be like basically thinking about your distribution channel first. And so for what you're doing in particular, I really like the idea of like an email newsletter as a distribution channel, because you're appealing to founders really. And like fact of the matter is like as a founder, you're pretty busy. You're not going to really take the time all the time. And I experience this with Indie Hackers all the time. Like you just don't constantly think, oh, let me go to a website and read, right? Because you've got a million different buyers to fight. You've got a million different problems to put out every single day. Whereas with a distribution channel like an email newsletter, what happens is people can just sort of subscribe and they say, I should be reading this every day. People subscribe to Indie Hackers because they're like, I should be subscribed to Indie Hackers. Like if I'm being a good founder, like I need to read these things, but I'm not going to take the initiative to do it myself. So an email newsletter is usually something that a lot of founders are amenable to. And since you're doing like these sort of short actionable case studies, like you could do a really high frequency newsletter. Like email newsletters tend to grow based on the frequency with which you send out emails. And so like the worst thing you could do is have like a once a year newsletter. But if you're sending out like literally an email every day or every other day with like a paragraph, like here's a marketing tip for today, like I'm never going to unsubscribe from that thing because it's so short. It's not an issue. I just read it in the morning. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I learned something. Maybe I didn't. But it's kind of like as a founder, I feel like I'm getting smarter every day just by reading your newsletter. So if I were you, like I would probably try that approach and try to basically get people on board and see if that's appealing to them and see if they actually care. You also have like a ton of watering holes, like Indie Hackers and Hacker News and like a ton of different like startup validation checklists and marketing checklists and launch checklists that exist online where like founders are already going to basically learn how to market their products and how to grow. And like, there's a lot of advice out there that like you need to build your own audience. I am guilty of saying that you need to build your own audience, but I think it's even better to just like steal your audience from someone else who's built an audience. And so like, if you know founders are going to these watering holes and that's where they're going to learn, rather than like having to come up with their own like, distribution sort of play from the beginning, what you could do is potentially borrow, the traffic from these websites. Like reach out to someone who's put together, God, what is the name of that project? It's like, I think it's like Startup Bash or Startup Mash or something. It's like the Startup Stash. It's like the #1 most upvoted product hunt thing of all time. Like, it's a ton of traffic. Just like reach out to the person who made that and just like talk to them about what you're doing and see if they'll put a link to what you're doing in there, right? There's probably a lot of stuff you can do where you're just going to sort of piggyback off these audiences that others have built. How does it sound so far? Does this make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer. I think, funnily enough, my second question was about growth, and I had a list of things wrote down. One was to do with an email list, but I didn't think I quite like your suggestion of something very small every day, because then it sort of becomes a thing. Yeah. I remember once Wes Boss was talking at a conference, and he said the best thing he's done with all his courses is to turn them into things in inverted commas, because then it spreads faster if it's a thing. So that made a lot of sense. Some other ideas, it was kind of similar to you. I also like the idea of something I wouldn't have thought of would be maybe reaching out to people with these websites which maintain a lot of traffic and asking for links, etc. My other ideas were fairly similar to what you said. It was places like Reddit, Twitter. I know did wonders for refactoring UI. They seem to just grow like, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, the Steve Shoga design book, but they just grew masses just through Twitter. And I think maybe it's because they had a couple of the right people retweeting, but I feel like that could be an interesting avenue, probably one which would be much slower than I'd hoped for. I know a lot of people would talk about SEO, and it might be quite hard to rank well for something as sort of obvious as good marketing tips. Right. But that's something which you think about perhaps. And I also thought maybe it's a slightly odder one, YouTube, but again, that had very little thought. So I suppose my second question, which you've already done a very good job answering, is would there be any other growth kind of avenues, or any ones which I mentioned which you thought wouldn't work well for this?
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of talked about SEO and you talked about it. SEO is challenging. It's not easy to just sort of win, but if you see an opportunity and you can do some like decent keyword research and like no time flat, like I would highly advise you to get started on it today, like ASAP, because eventually it will pay off and you'll be very glad that you did. 6 months from now is going to come 6 months from now, whether you do it or not. So I advise you, like, if you think that's at all an option, like do it. The sort of like blowing up on Twitter thing, honestly, I don't know if you can engineer stuff like that. Like it happens all the time. We see the numerator of like, oh, these companies blew up on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. We don't see the denominator of like the failed business models that have like tried to blow up on social media and like it didn't work out. So I would probably shy away from that one because it's harder to control. And then the last thing that I will say, and we're going to move on, is like think a lot about capturing value. Like the good thing about an email list is like that's an email list. Like you have those people's emails forever, and you can create a lot of value by putting out this content into the world that people can read and like actually make better business decisions as a result of it. But if you don't capture like your audience, then it's really hard to move to like step 2 of the staircase, because like, what do you do, right? People come to your site, they love it, but then what are you going to do, right? If you have an email list, then like whatever else you release, you can add it like as in the footer of your email, whatever you do forever into the future, you basically have your own distribution channel. And so I'm super bullish on email lists. I think it's like probably the best distribution channel, that and SEO. And it's cool because no one else really controls it. You can take it with you wherever you want. And eventually like any hacker used to be very reliant on Hacker News, but nowadays like we get our own basically miniature Hacker News spike every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday because we send out our newsletter. And so like if you work towards being on that situation, then you get to a place where you can really do interesting things, because you can basically continually launch new products to your own audience. So I'm super bullish on an email list. Like you said, make it a thing. Make multiple email lists, right? What if you have 10 different email lists that people can subscribe to that have different types of marketing advice? Like who knows?
That's a cool idea.
But yeah, it's fun. We should talk about this more.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for the help. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All right. Callum, I'm going to promote you to be a panelist. How's it going, Callum?
Let's sort that out. There we go. All good.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thanks. You?
Excellent. I'm wearing my new Indie Hacker shirt. Came in the mail.
It's a great t-shirt. Love it. I'm in half shirt and half pajamas on like the bottom half. So nice mix. Nice mix.
So why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you're working on and why you're here?
Cool. So, hey, indie hackers. So, I'm Callum, and I'm working on my site Bookerino, which is essentially a book club discussion platform, and it's somewhere where you'll sort of go to talk about sort of the latest sort of startup and tech related books, a lot of sales, marketing, and things like that, and something I hope to sort of expand in the future. And as well as a discussion platform, it's meant to be a place where you can sort of record your notes on each book. So whenever you actually engage in discussions, it records sort of under your profile, and it will sort of keep a list of all the notes you have for sort of non-fiction books. And that one, I must admit, is thanks to Rosie Sherry for helping me out with that idea when I met up with her. So that was good. And yeah, that's essentially what my idea is a book club discussion platform.
Cool. Where are you in the process right now? Is it an idea? Is there any code?
I've created the first version like a couple of years ago, and sort of sat on it, ended up with sort of like various job related things, and I've come back to it again and pretty much rebuilt the entire thing again, and sort of honed it in more on just sort of one book at a time rather than sort of various books. And yeah, it's hopefully ready to be released in, I think, just under 2 weeks. So the 15th of April is when I'm planning to release it. So got a lot to do.
Cool. It's coming up. So,
yeah.
So what do you envision as like your biggest obstacles? What do you want help with? What do you want to talk about?
Absolutely. Getting users is my biggest issue. I mean, yeah.
That tiny detail of getting users.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just don't know really where to start. I mean, as you were saying to Harry, like using existing platforms is an avenue I've looked at. It's just, how would you, if you were sort of running Bookerino, try and get users?
Yeah, I'll tell you the same thing I told Harry.
Yeah.
Steal an audience. Find
Yeah,
an existing audience of people who already are book lovers and get them onto your platform.
Yeah, sure.
What you're doing is really interesting because, like, in a way, like a book club is a community, but it's like a miniature community, right? It's at least like the traditional book club is like 5 to 15 people.
Yeah.
Same book. It's not like thousands and thousands of people. So I got to ask you a few questions about it. Like,
Yeah,
how do you envision it working? Like, do you envision having these like, thousands of tiny book clubs, or do you want to have like a huge book club where it's like thousands of people reading the same book? Like, what does this look like?
So I wanted to make it more of a huge book club type thing. So it was where the idea came out of where I was reading fantasy books and I was getting really hyped up about it. And I get to a certain point and there was just no one else to talk to when I got to it. And I was like, oh, okay. Like everyone else is enjoying discussions on Reddit on the latest episode of The Walking Dead. Where's this one for my fantasy book? And that's where the idea came from. And sort of from there, I've honed it into non-fiction books for now, but sort of hope to expand it to sort of more singular books for different genres.
Okay, cool. So what's cool about that is that like introduces some constraints that sort of limit your options.
Yeah.
Like having everybody read the same book at the same time is also really cool because you can build up like a lot of momentum. So what I mean by that is if you have, generally like having a lot of people do anything at the same time, like is super powerful. Like if you have even 20 people tweet about like the same thing at the same time using the same hashtag, like you can get that hashtag trending.
Yeah.
Like that will drive attention to it. Like if you have like 20 people upvote the same post in Hacker News, like that will get to the top, right? So I think having everybody like in sort of this community is really cool. And the cool thing is like you can start small. Like you're talking about getting users. Like honestly, just start a book club. Start like a normal book club with like 5 or 10 people. Like you can do that without any sort of like being clever. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your colleagues and coworkers. Get people to commit to reading some sort of book. You're doing like startup books, right? Like nonfiction.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Get people on Indie Hackers. Like go on Indie Hackers and say like, I am reading this book starting April 14th. Who wants to be in? I'll put it in there. Like I guarantee you'll get at least a few people who are like, you know what, this book is on my list forever. Like, I want to read it too.
Yeah.
And then like as part of the reading process, what I would do is like try to make sure you get everybody together, because reading is a very solitary thing. Like you just read by yourself, but like book club is like to reconvene. So I don't know if you're going to be doing that like through your software you're building or through like a Zoom call like this or something. But once you get everybody together in the same place, like you can get everybody to sort of act in a way to do things that can bring you new people. And so like I would use like the sort of collective power to like advertise your book club on like Reddit or Twitter, other websites, and just sort of grow it from there. Like it'll always be sort of incrementally growing. And if you're just always like restricting yourself to one book, then you can just look at the number of people in your particular group and just sort of go like, okay, we have 100 people now, now we have 120, and see like what starts to break and fix it. I think the challenge of like doing it the opposite way would be like, you have all these different isolated book clubs and you yourself cannot be like really part of all of them because you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you don't know which clubs are dying, which clubs are healthy, et cetera. So yeah, does that make sense? Like,
definitely. No, that really does make sense. It sounds good. So it brings me on to my other question is, how do you sort of manage to keep a community engaged on a site and sort of keep people coming to your site?
Yeah. So basically, like the cool thing about a community is like you get people there by helping them solve a problem like any other startup, right? With Indie Hackers, the problem was, hey, I want to build a company, but I have no idea how to do it, right? The company I want to build, no one ever writes about it anywhere but Indie Hackers. People are sort of sharing their stories. They can go here and find tactical tips, et cetera. So it's a very practical reason. But when you have a community, like, and I think in your situation, it's like a book, right? I'm going to read this book. I'm practical about this book. It's like very practical. But when you have a community, especially if you have like a dedicated space and like a time and a place where everybody's going to be there together, what happens like you as a person just like forge connections with other people in that community. And what happens if you go there and you make like 2 or 3 friends in the community and they're friends with each other, and the only place every time of the week that you can see all of these people is here, like you're going to keep coming back over and over and over again. And so I think to sort of like build stickiness into your community, you just need to avoid doing things that prevent people from forming those kind of human bonds and sort of err towards doing things that allow them to do that. What you're doing in particular, like that might be a little bit challenging because like if you have like, I don't know, a room of 2,000 people reading the same book, what's a good problem to have? Like that's later on, like thousands of people, but like then it's really hard because like who is really who? It's kind of random. You're not building any real connections. And so there is something to be said for like bringing it down to the more like personal level where like people can actually get to know each other and recognize faces and names and like talk about things and like actually build a bond. But it's like people are doing that and like you don't have to worry about anything. People will come back week after week as long as the book is like something they want to read. Other concerns for you, like people falling off the wagon and so to speak, like what happens if you're really far behind. I think a lot about like it might not seem to be like that related to your business, but are you aware of Lambda School? It's like a school teaching code. So it's like an online school teaches people how to code, and they start you in cohorts. And I think it's like 9 months of learning, but it's like you and 100 other people start at the same time. And what happens is like at different points in time, like people fall off, like they just fall off, right? Some people are slower, they get sick, etc. But they have all sorts of stuff baked into the program to sort of help you catch up, right? And like that just avoids churn because they want all of the students to get through. So like if I were you, I'd look at school and a lot of what they're doing, because a lot of it applies to you. If you're trying to move everybody through this pipeline at the same time, how do you make sure that like that people come back the next week? Like how do you make sure that people don't fall behind? How do you make sure that people are making these connections? And I assume you'll learn a lot just by doing it. But like what's cool is you can start small. Like you can start with 5 people and really start.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the plan. I just need to get it out there and hopefully I'll build it up. So thank you very much for your insights, and massive fan of Indie Hackers. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Callum. Good luck and stay in touch.
Thank you. See ya.
Later, Callum. Helen, you were going to be next. I want to promote you to become a panelist. I always get jealous when I'm doing this stuff because you guys have all these cool businesses that I wish were my businesses. Hey, Helen, how's it going?
Hey, Courtland, how you doing, bro?
Excellent. Good to see you. I've seen your face on Indie Hackers so many times.
Oh, nice. Good to see you. And thanks for this time, man. So I'm going to be real quick, try to get through it quick. So I know you got a lot of folks. want to chat with you. So to the Indie Hackers crew, what's up, everyone? I'm Helen. I'm founder of Mindful, and Mindful actually helps you to connect and get closer to your customers. So we do that by matching up your network with warm intros to your leads and prospects, and also align your product's mission and to your customers' business needs with good data. So I did some research on you, Courtland, so I don't have to waste too much time on just your asking you for a zillion time your startup journey. So I'm going to kind of like lay in some of your history into my questions to give the Indie Hackers people some context on my questions. So all my questions are sales, so I'm doing customer research.
Okay.
So back in the day when you started off Indie Hackers, you definitely did a lot of high touch. You were doing cold emails, begging folks to just give you a chance, like an R&B singer. Yep. And so I was curious. I noticed that in a couple quotes of yours, you're saying that you was reaching out to a lot of businesses that had affiliate programs and that was offering deals for the Indie Hacker family. Yeah. So I was curious with your current customer or current sponsors or your ideal customer, how are they different from your earlier day customers, or are they you just grew on with them?
Well, that's a difficult one to answer because I don't have any sponsors anymore.
Okay.
Stripe pays for everything because Stripe owns Indie Hackers, and so I just focus on growing the site and making it better, not on sales. But I can tell you a little bit about how like my last set of customers differed from my initial ones. Mm-hmm. That would be interesting. Like, what do you want to get at here?
I was just from, if you go with your last cohort of customers before you did the acquisition, like how did they differ from the earlier customers?
So the last cohort of customers I had were almost only big companies. They were almost always basically an employee at a big company who worked in the marketing department, and their entire job was to be given an advertising budget and to spend it on podcasts and startups. Whereas my early customers were almost all like Indie Hackers. I was trying to sell to my own audience. And so in the early days, what I would do is like literally as part of my newsletter, I would put links in there that says, hey, Indie Hackers is taking on sponsorships and you can sponsor Indie Hackers, get your ad here, et cetera. And of course, this is going out to other Indie Hackers. And so I had all these small business owners who would basically pay me $200 or $300 to get like a slot in the newsletter, et cetera, et cetera. The reason I stopped doing that is because like, as much as I love Indie Hackers, like they're not fun to sell to.
Yeah.
You want to sell to people who have money.
Yeah.
Reasons why you want to sell to people who have money. Number one, like whoever you sell to is who you're going to learn from. And people who have money just have more to teach you and they spend more money. So like if you're going to learn lessons, like you want to learn the lessons that help you target like more expensive, lucrative customers rather than learning lessons that help you target smaller customers. I was building a lot of software to like facilitate the sales process. And it's like, when I was selling to small people, like I was building software that was helpful to them. When I was selling to big people, I was building software that was helpful to them. So you kind of want to like imagine your ideal customer, and like if you can start there, like do it. Number two, like bigger customers are just like easier. People are so afraid of enterprise sales, but like honestly, every sales call that I had with a big company was just downright pleasant. It was just like getting on the phone. I would talk to someone in marketing, and they would just want to tell me about their kids and their vacations. And they'd be like, here's a check for $5,000. Super easy, right? Like the small time sort of like more frugal Indie Hackers were like, they wanted to know where every single dollar that they spent was going. They would email me 10 times a week. How many clicks do my ads get? How many views is the sponsorship getting on your podcast, et cetera, because like they don't have that much of a budget. So it's really important to them. And so like their stress became my stress, and like it just, on a physiological level, didn't feel good. So that's the difference between my early customers and my later customers. I made a lot more money and was a lot happier selling to my later customers.
Got you. And I was curious with your later customers, did any of them show you a sign that, okay, I can't get rid of this sponsor quick enough? That it was just, even though they hit all the check marks, on paper, and they had the money, that you was like, oh crap.
No one comes to mind, I mean, later on, it was just like kind of the same thing I was talking about, where it's like, when people started to be like super obsessed with, the exact performance of all of their ads. And it's not to say like I didn't care about that, but like when people are like just crazy about it, and like I knew it was going to be sort of a pain. When people would ask for like all sorts of custom work, I'm like, hey, here's the different ad packages that I have. They're like, oh, can we do like these 15 different other things? Like those were kind of problem customers to some degree. But other than that, there wasn't anything that was too bad.
Okay, I was curious. Did with your layer customers, did they prioritize anything over performance data of their ads?
I wouldn't say they prioritize anything over that. Like that was always kind of like the number one thing. Like how big is your audience? But they really cared about who the audience was, right? Like who like is going to be even reading this ad, right? Otherwise, it's not relevant to them. They really cared a lot about like what kind of content it was going to go out alongside. So they wanted to know who else was advertising, what episodes of the podcast or ads would appear alongside. I think that's just sort of like a brand type thing. Like people don't want to look bad advertising, sort of sponsoring the wrong thing, because like they're sort of putting their name on your website if they're advertising for you. So that was always important to them. Something that mattered a lot, like in terms of sales, was like kind of like the average revenue per user of the customer. So like there's some sponsors I worked with where if like even one person clicked their link and bought what they were selling, like they would recoup their entire ad spend, right? Like they're doing like, I don't know, like hiring engineers. It's like they get a $10,000 kickback by placing one engineer. One programmer from Indie Hackers clicks, it's profitable for them. So they're like, yeah, we'll pay for ads all day, right? Some customers were like, I need to get 300 clicks and half of them need to convert to paying users in order to make, $200. And it's like, that's not going to happen. And so those are bad. So like by the end, I was kind of looking at the business model of the company and I was like, are you going to actually be able to be profitable with your ad campaign or not?
I'm almost getting close to being done. I was wondering, when you were doing sales, what was your number one metrics? And now that you don't have sales, it's not like a dead cloud, a gray cloud over you anymore. What's your number one metric now?
My number one metric doing sales is revenue. How much money am I making? When I was doing sales, I was running Indie Hackers as sort of my solo business, right? It's like, I got to pay for this apartment. I need to pay for my food and my bills. Like how much money am I bringing in the door? Nothing else matters. I kind of cared a lot about like how much time I spent doing sales, because like the downside for selling ads, and this is not true of selling everything, but for selling ads, like generally like ads don't make your user experience better. Like you're happy you're selling ads. And so it's like, I didn't really want to spend most of my time doing something that was actively making my website worse. So I cared a lot about like, I was literally tracking my time, like how much time per week am I spending selling ads, because I didn't want that to run away from me. And I was looking for alternative business models. Nowadays, Indie Hackers is no business model. Like we have no real revenue goals. We are a part of Stripe. Stripe's mission is to grow the GDP of the internet, which quite literally means like getting more people to start companies and helping those companies make better business decisions. Like that translates into more people building internet businesses that do better. If Stripe is doing its job well, those internet businesses will use Stripe, and quite literally Stripe will make more money by founders doing a better job. So like what I try to like prioritize is like, how inspirational is Indie Hackers? Are people starting companies because of it? And how helpful is it? Like, are people making better business decisions? Like the reason I'm doing these office hours is to sort of connect people and help them build better companies. That's why we have the meetups. That's why we do the interviews. That's why we do everything. So that's kind of like the ideal goal for what we do with Indie Hackers. Gotcha.
And I think that this is my last question. I was wondering, during your sales journey, at the end of it, what's the majority of the results you was getting from your sales effort? Was it like no decision? Was it a lot of stalling because they was requesting for features? Was it stalling because it wasn't the right decision maker? Or was it too many decision makers, or just bad timing?
Honestly, I had a really high success rate. Like I didn't measure the exact percentages, but it was like, felt like almost everybody that I had like inbound sales in a little ways, where it's like I would put ads saying like, hey, you could buy this slot for your company, and people would be inbound. Those always converted once people email me. There's a lot of negotiation. There's a lot of price discrimination going on, where I would like change the price based on who could afford it. It's like I didn't want there to be unsold inventory. So it was very easy to make sure people converted. Outbound was a little bit lower because I was just emailing random people. But like I got a pretty good list of leads from a friend who had started a similar podcast, where it's like, hey, like I know these people have paid for ad space on my podcast. You should email them and they will probably pay for like ad space on your podcast. And so like once that worked out for me, like that's kind of all I did. Like talk to people who ran podcasts and said like, hey, who's advertised with you? Listen to other podcasts, see who was advertising, get their email addresses and email those people. And like every one of those people, like they had a dedicated budget for podcast ads. And so like they didn't need me to build any features or change anything. They're just like, oh, cool, what's your podcast? How many people listen to it? Who are they? Great, we'll take this many months. How much is it? So it was pretty straightforward.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Only thing I guess I can ask you now is just like, what can I do to help you out, bro? You helped me out just now, so.
You know what? I see you on the forum all the time. Just stay on the forum. Next time you see somebody who has a post, they don't have any comments, jump in there and try to help them. Like that legitimately helps me to see people and indie hackers helping each other. That's my entire goal. People help each other.
Okay. I can do that. I can do that after I take a nap. I can do that.
Okay, deal. Thanks,
all right, thanks, man.
All right, Aaron, you are next. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. Later, Helen. Once you get in here, Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on? I don't hear your volume yet.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah, so I guess I could just jump into it. My app is called Count, and Count kind of came from the problem I had that I wanted just a really quick way to get like structured and organized information into my phone. So basically, you create an event and then you add fields to it, like a slider, text, numbers, those sorts of things. And you can just basically input it really quickly and then view stats on it, things like that. I use it to, for example, track like the cups of coffee I drink or like product ideas I have, all that different kind of stuff. So that's
okay. I'm trying to get a handle on how this works. So it's a knowledge base. It's on my phone. What do I use it for? Like, why am I putting cups of coffee in here? What do I put in there?
Well, for me, like for example, I was interested in like how many cups of coffee do I drink every day? So basically you just open it up, you tap it real quick, and then you track it. And then you can also add other fields to it, like text and numbers. And so like, if I have like an app or product idea, I save the name of the idea, then also give it a rating. So I can go back and look at it in the future and see like which ones I thought were good, which ones I didn't think were good, things like that.
Okay, cool. And so it's like I sort of define like what a thing is. Like I tell it, this is me tracking my coffee, and here's all the fields I can enter for coffee. Or is it like free form? Like I can type whatever I want at any point in time.
Yeah, so I think it's more like the first example. You just give it like an icon and a name, and then you say okay from there.
Cool. Yeah, I can think of a lot of ways that I would use that. All right, so where are you in the process right now? What are your goals, and what's stopping you from getting there?
Yeah, so right now I'm probably about 50% of the way through development of the app. I have a couple people testing it, getting feedback. So the product development is going great. The issue I'm having is that I'm not really sure how to market the app. Kind of like from a conversation just happened. It's kind of like a hard app to explain. So for example, like some people I talk to think of it more as like a notes type app, while others are like, oh, it's a life tracker, when I consider it both kind of. And I'm curious of how you think I should like handle this marketing, or if I should even be worrying about this right now. That kind of stuff. Basically.
Okay. Yeah, that's big stuff. So you're in a situation where the thing that you're building is very open-ended. Like the good news is that like anybody could use this for anything. The bad news is that anybody could use this for anything. Like that's really fucking hard, because then it's like, if you're building a product for everybody, you're building a product for nobody. It's hard to like get the messaging across. And that's not completely true. There are lots of open-ended, like multi-purpose, use it however you want apps that have like done phenomenally well. It's just a difficult sort of industry to get a foothold in, because like the problem you're going through right now, like what is your messaging? How do you figure out who's going to use this? Like when I've seen other companies succeed doing that, like a lot of what they do is like, I don't know if there's a term for it. I would call it like question-based sales. And so like they would go into a call like this with somebody who's a potential customer and be like, hey, instead of saying this is what I built, you say like, hey, do you do this thing? Or you ask them questions. And then like based on what they're telling you, then you sort of talk about how your app can do that thing. The challenge is that you're probably like not charging a lot of money for this, and so you can't do like sales. It's not a business model that's like viable for you. Maybe you can replicate sort of the same thing through marketing, right? Like you could potentially have a bunch of different landing pages for different use cases. And when you go into a particular channel, like if you go into a channel for productivity nerds on Reddit or something, like you could send them a particular landing page that's going to appeal to them. If you go to Hacker News, you can have like a developer focused landing page that shows some like really cool use cases for developers tracking different things. I've also seen a lot of apps in this space just like build templates. So if you think about things like Airtable or Notion or even like Google Docs, like a lot of times they'll just be like, we've created a template that shows you exactly how to use something for this particular use case. Like almost every one of these apps has like some sort of template gallery. And I think part of the reason why they have that is just because like they know they've got a ton of different people using it for different reasons. And it's super important to sort of show people how you can use it, because like, quite frankly, like users are kind of like, no one's like spending their day thinking about like, oh, how can I use Aaron's app? You know, like they kind of want you to just tell them that, and their brains on other things. So if you can tell them that by having templates and stuff, I think that stuff is super useful. How does this sound so far? Does this make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of what I was thinking of, maybe like, I know like shortcuts, it's a lot like shortcuts or on iOS, and that gives like a gallery of things like that other people have made or something.
Yeah. So like there's some other stuff too with your idea. Like when I think about something, I try to break it down into like these 4 quadrants. This guy, Brian Balfour, has this model called like the 4 fits. And like the quadrants are like product, market, pricing model, and like distribution channels. And you really want to think about all of them. And for you, like the biggest question mark is like, what is your pricing model? Like how much are you going to charge for this? Are you charging for this? And that sort of dictates like literally everything, right? If you're like, you know what, I'm going to, you know, charge $1,000 a customer for this, then it's like you can do sales magically because like that, but you can probably have different customers, different market, and like a whole different set of features. So have you thought about pricing and how much you want to make or charge?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a little bit about it. Since it's mainly like, at least right now for personal use, I was thinking like pretty minimal, like, you know, maybe $5 a month or something. So it'd be pretty small.
Okay, so my advice is don't charge $5 a month, because charging $5 a month is exceedingly difficult to do. Charge $5 a month, like just like the fallout from that and like sort of the cascading like effects of what that means is like, number one, you immediately eliminate a whole bunch of different distribution channels that you just can't profitably target anymore. And it's not just stuff like sales, but it's like a whole bunch of other stuff. Number two, like this whole sort of mantra of like do things that don't scale, right? Like find your customers by talking to them, etc. Like suddenly like doing things that don't scale doesn't work for you, because you have to scale to reach the number of customers that you need to make a profitable living for yourself. Like $5 a month, you need 2,000 paying customers just to make 10K a month for yourself, quit your job and do this full time. Like, I'm not sure if that's your goal. Like if that's not your goal, that's fine. But like, if it is your goal, like, you know, I would err on the side of like having a business where you're charging like $500 a month, you know, and like, you only need to find like, you know, 20 customers or something before you can quit your job. And you can go out, you can call 20 customers on the phone in like a week, right? You're making like things like significantly easier for yourself. The downside is that like, based on what you have, like, it's probably not going to be easy to charge $500 a month. Like, that's probably not an option for like an open purpose note-taking app. But like, I wouldn't completely rule it out, or maybe something that's like, you know, 5 or 10 times less than that. If you find like a really special use case that like ideally you can sell to customers who find a lot of value in that. And so like, I don't know how many users you have right now, but like you might see people using it in a way that like very clearly makes them money or saves them money, or does something where they can easily reason like, hey, I'm using Count, and it's like dieting, for example. Like, people pay a lot of money for dieting solutions. Like, if you could tie this in to like something that helps people actually like eat healthier, count their calories, lose weight, etc., like people, that has a real value to people. You can also keep it like sort of open-ended, use it however you want way. And like, there are apps that have succeeded like that. I had, have you heard of Workflowy?
No, I haven't.
So I interviewed the Workflowy guys on my podcast, but it's like this infinite outliner tool where you can like create these outlines, but like you can go infinite levels deep, because like you just keep clicking into each bullet point and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper forever. And it's like the ultimate open purpose tool. Like, who knows what you use this for, whatever you want to. And I think they charge something like 25 to 50 bucks a year or something. It's super cheap. And they found a way to make it work. So if I were you, like I would look at like the growth strategies of companies like that if you're really determined to stick to sort of an open-ended model and like figure out like how they've grown, like how do you get your first foothold. Because as far as I know, like they never had any sort of template gallery. They were just like open-ended all the time and people just sort of used it. It might just be luck. So maybe that's not something you want to copy. But like the last thing I'll say is like, if you go that route, like you're almost certainly going to I don't want to say trap yourself, but like you're almost certainly going to enter like what I would call like a black hole of engineering where you never stop coding and you're never at a point where your feature set is ever done or even close to done because you have all these competing like note-taking apps and task apps that like always have features. Like it's like probably the most code intensive business that you could ever start. As kind of like a solo developer. So like be wary of that and best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, cool. I am going to bring on someone's chatting here. Lisa Gummerman from sunshower.io. All right, Lisa, you are on here. Don't you enable?
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Let me go next. I'm at a co-work space right now that technically closes at 8, and so I'm hoping they don't kick me out.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, so I work on sunshower.io, and we like to say that we do beautifully simple cloud management and optimization as a service.
Right.
Basically, so my husband and I started it, and we both have worked as engineers and been in the situation of like, I mean, one of my big anecdotes is like if you've ever spun up an instance on like AWS and then forgot about it until you got the $200 like bill, like we're your people. So sort of we just launched very recently, sort of like end of January, beginning of February, like a super soft, like didn't really talk about it sort of launch, none of that big sort of splashy shenanigans. And our initial thing is working with people using Amazon Web Services, specifically the EC2 offering that they have, and optimizing it. So basically we take in metadata about their system, sort of look at what we like to call the shape of their workload on a particular instance, and then do some super cool math on it to give you sort of like, these are the 10 instances you could be using instead. And we've typically found like we could save people like 40 to 80%, and we're giving it away for free. And we're like, this is the coolest thing in the world. We save people money. My email should be blowing up.
Right.
And to the point of like part of why we're here is, yeah, like we're engineers. We built the product because, you know, we saw the need for it, and we love building software, and we love helping startups, right? And so that's sort of who we're trying to gear towards, is other companies, little companies, right? You know, like, so if you're spending like even $200 a month, that can be a lot, right? That can be prohibitively expensive. And then there's, if you're spending 25,000 a month, like that's several salaries, right? And so if you could not do that, that would be great. And so I guess what we're sort of struggling with, and my primary thing, which is like my exigent April life crisis, is like, how do we like start? How do we get customers? Like where, you know, there's so many options and everybody gives you all these recommendations, but like there's only so many of us. And so figuring out what to prioritize on that customer acquisition front is not the easiest thing I've done in my life.
Okay, so let me ask you like about some of your financial realities. Because I think that if you're facing a situation where you've got like a lot of options, but there's only two of you, you don't know what to do. You just want like some sort of like algorithm you can use to slice out bad options, right? So I take it you guys are running this like intending for it to be a business that can support your lifestyles, so you can quit your jobs, et cetera. Is that true?
Yeah, so we actually already have. We had a bunch of money saved up, and it sort of got to the point. So my husband's been full-time on it since last March. He was sort of miserable and burnt out on his job, and I was like, I don't even care if it goes anywhere, like just build tech that you love. And then it sort of started to go places. Last August, we started sort of talking to people, and then so I've been full-time on it now almost 5 months. And we're lucky enough that we can sort of support ourselves for the next year, just things being as they are.
Right.
We figure eventually we'll hop on the VC treadmill.
Yeah.
But I would like us to be, at like, 100 or 500 customers before we get to that point, just on principle.
Okay. So a year, that's a lot of runway.
I know, right? But also it takes so long. Like to your point earlier with the SEO thing, like, yeah, we're working on blogging and we actually do have another person on and she does a bunch of our writing, but like, that's going to be like, hopefully we see something from that in September.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say a year is a long time because it's good because you don't have to sweat, but at the same time, like when you have that much time, what you end up doing a lot of the time is like shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak, because you start doing things that take a long time. You don't have like the time pressure of like, I need to succeed right now. Like when I started Indie Hackers, I had a year of runway and I spent 6 months like kind of just messing around on stuff that didn't work very well. And after that, I was like, oh shit, I've got 6 months of runway left in the bank. I need to get serious. And then like I did all the super disciplined things that were like geared towards like short-term success. And like it turned out that was a way better option. So with you, like I would probably eliminate, in fact, it's probably this is good advice from most founders, like eliminate anything that's going to like take a super long period of time, unless it's like a byproduct of something you're already doing. So with Harry earlier on, it's like I was saying, oh yeah, SEO, but he's like making a content site. Like he has to write content. He might as well do the SEO. Like you guys are helping people like lower their cloud infrastructure bills. Like that's worth a lot of money, especially if you're saving people like thousands of dollars a month. And to get to the point where you're like profitable, like even if you're taking like a reasonable percentage of that, like you shouldn't need that many customers to be profitable. How much are you charging?
So that's another question. So we are trying to price it sort of based on the number of instances you have. So right now the plan is in June to start charging just like $20 a month plus $1 per instance. We'd actually initially, and we're still planning on bringing this in, looked at like we run the optimization and we see that we can save you, $5,000. And so we take 10% of that. Right. And then one of the things we realized really early on is if for some reason people can't take our recommendations right then, like our results are so good that we could actually like really screw you over, right? We, if you don't have $500 to spend, then like, and you can't for whatever reason make that switch.
Right.
And so once we can immediately, one of the plans for 2019 is like literally give you like a big green button, like move over to the new thing now. And then we would take that percentage. But in the meantime, we need a way to like charge for you to use the platform that makes it value added enough that you don't churn off it the moment that you get your results. But then,
okay,
so a lot to figure out before June.
Here's my bias. These are just like my biases. They might not be something that appeals to you like aesthetically, so you might go the opposite direction. My bias is like if somebody can't afford you, like they are not your customer. Don't spend time on them. Don't spend effort on them. Like especially don't build features for them. Figure out how to get the people who can afford you, like the people who are already spending thousands of dollars a month on AWS, and like $500 for them is nothing. In fact, like it comes out of the money that you save them, so that's never a conversation. I would definitely pick those to be my initial customers. And like you seem like experts, right? Like this is a place where you guys are doing a lot of research, a lot of knowledge. Like there's a lot that you can provide up front that, again, this is like my bias, but like I really like service businesses. I think having some sort of a service, especially when you're an expert, is really cool because people value services. They pay for them up front. You get to know your customers really well and learn a lot of stuff, and it's easier to sort of figure out where to take your product from there. And so like I could imagine you guys like coming into a company and being like sort of almost like AWS consultants in a way. Like you're going to help people save money on their bill, figure out how to do different things with EC2. And then like sort of as that part of that process, sell them your product. And like that doesn't have to be a permanent thing, but it can be something that sort of helps you kickstart like generating revenue and figuring out exactly like what your product needs to be. And like I think there's like the good thing about doing stuff like that is like the side effects of it. Like the side effects of doing something like that is you end up focusing a lot more on like the sales process. Like how do you identify the ideal customer? How do you get them to like explain, like how do you explain your value proposition and get them to say yes? Because like you're a consultant in a way. And so it's like you have to do sales, right? And then once you figure out your sales process, you can sort of like take your learnings in this language and like bake that into your marketing materials, and then, like, your marketing will become more compelling. So like I might explore doing something like that, and the money you make from doing something like that can like easily extend your runway by like quite a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like your product, like if you're going to be able to save people thousands of dollars, like there's like countless thousands and thousands and thousands of companies that that could afford you. So like I would say don't waste. If people can't pay you like, you know, $20 a month or whatever it is that you're trying to charge, like don't waste time on them. Like they're not your customers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem is, you know, they're like, oh yeah, there's 100 million, you know, tech companies being started like every year. And to the, like with the whole sales cycle, I mean, ideally for me, we would be able to move it, you know, it's a self-service platform. Like you literally can go log in right now if you want.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would really like to move it to sort of where people opt themselves in. And I know that never like works initially, right? But there is, at least for me, I feel like a really long qualification process of it's like, well, do you have a tech company? Like, are you on AWS? Are you using this particular service on AWS? Like,
right.
in this particular service, like, is this your situation? And that's, I think is it's like a, you know, I'll just like sit in my bathtub for hours trying to qualify leads so that I can email them, right?
Right. Yeah, that is tough. The examples that I know of like people doing like tangentially similar things, like they're kind of useful for every business. It's like a tech company. With you, if it's like they have to be using a very specific service, like it might be worth doing some more of like the marketing inbound type stuff. Like I'm looking at your website and it seems like you guys are writing like content about your cloud build being too high.
Yeah.
Like maybe take a more roundabout method. Because maybe this is a problem people have they don't even know that they have, right? But they're thinking
part of it, yeah.
And so like they're not going to find these articles because they're not really Googling for it. But if you know that like your product is only useful for people who are using Elastic Beanstalk and they've got X EC2 instances, like you can write articles that are basically like, here's how you set this thing up with Elastic Beanstalk, right? Or you're like teaching people how to do some of the things that you guys know how to do. And like those articles will probably spread far and wide, or like if they're well written and you get them to like the right distribution channels, like Hacker News or something, or like r/programming, or maybe even startup related stuff. And then like in those articles, you can kind of talk about like, oh, here's how you save a bunch of money on this bill. And since like you're kind of doing like an expert based sale, like you're an expert, you teach people how to do stuff, like people like inherently trust you if they've read something or like you've helped them. So like, I think what you're doing is like good. Like, how do you save more? Like, how do you save money? But like, I just don't know if people are like looking directly for that kind of content, because it seems like a problem. Like I was on AWS, like I didn't really think like I'm wasting money. You know, I was never searching for articles like that, but I was searching for articles like, how do I set up my Elastic Beanstalk? Like it's just so buggy, it doesn't work. So that might help. I don't know. Hopefully this has been helpful.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is like, you guys are both engineers. Like you probably have an inherent bias towards building things to solve problems. I know I do. Like I build all, like every month, like I have to check myself. Like I think a lot of being a founder is just psychological. It's just like mind games. If you can like do something to prevent you guys from trying to solve problems with code, you will probably make better decisions. You can kind of just trust that that's the case, because probably you err towards like building things that are fun. Like what's the button we can put here and how can we connect this stuff? Whereas a lot of the problems are just like literally pick up the phone and like talk to 20 people. Like that's not particularly clever or fun, but it ultimately, like sometimes you learn a lot more and you sell a lot more doing that kind of stuff, especially in the early days.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Lisa, thanks. All right, next I will be bringing on Felix. Felix, once you get in here, why don't you introduce yourself? All right, Felix, you're on. What's up? How's it going? I can't hear you. I see you. Your mic is probably on like a different channel. I see you've got your AirPods in. Why don't you maybe try without your AirPods? All right, I'll let you figure that out. I'm gonna bring in. Oh, there we go. Yes, you're here. How's it going? Okay, you just got super quiet. I heard you for a second and then you were muted and now you're like super quiet.
I think now the AirPods.
You're like almost there. Like it sounds like you're like 100 miles away though. Whatever you're touching, I could just hear. It's like,
I think.
Yeah, there you go. Now I can hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the AirPods came back on.
Okay, cool. How's it going?
Good, great, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. And look, I'll just jump right into it. Like a brief summary of what I've been working on and like where we're at.
Okay.
So I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and a co-founder of Strawberry Socials. Last year, my co-founder and I spent about 150 hours finding and contacting new Instagram influencers just for different projects we were working on. And about 4 weeks ago, we thought we should just automate this because this is ridiculous. And it worked really well. And we decided there's probably a bunch of other businesses that are also doing this stuff manually that might be interested. So we just started reaching out to a few businesses, and that was about 4 weeks ago. And we've sent around like 500 cold emails now, and feel like the response rate we're getting is way higher than anything we've gotten in the past. We've done like 30 different customer interviews and calls, and even managed to get a few sales for like what are essentially Google spreadsheets. And yeah, we feel like we've stumbled onto like a real pain point that people are willing to solve. And I guess where we're at now is trying to work out how to take like that early momentum and like a very, very rough MVP,
right,
and turn it into something bigger.
Well, first of all, you're like in a really cool spot. It seems like you recognize that. Like, it's the vast majority of the time, it's the opposite problem. Like, I spent the last year and a half building something, and like, I have no idea if anyone's interested in it. So the fact that you guys have already got people interested, they're responding to your cold calls, is like a really good place to be in. Question, you're asking me like, how do you take this momentum and get it to the next level? What's your plan right now, and what's do you feel stopping you from getting to the next level? Like, why not just keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, great question. I mean, just to your other point as well, like we did spend about 6 months doing other stuff. So, you know, to all the other people listening who think we just stumbled into it, like we definitely worked through a lot of ideas to get there.
Right.
But yeah, I think like what's stopping us now is not necessarily like a specific thing blocking us, but rather that we're getting to the stage where we've got way too much to do and not enough time. So in terms of trying to focus like our energy and our time into like specific milestones, like I wonder, I mean, you were talking to Harry about like specific steps and to always, you know the next 2 or 3 steps.
Yeah.
I think we're not sure what those next 2 or 3 steps should be. Should we be building a website? Should we be improving the product? Should we be trying to like get an even more specific customer? Like, because it's still a little bit broad at the moment. You know, should we be trying to test out different pricing models? Should we just be trying to sell more? Like,
out of all those options, the last one you listed is the one I was going to suggest. Try to sell more.
Yeah.
Here's the reason. You can come up with all sorts of like hypotheses and guesses and do all sorts of research to sort of figure out like what is the best next step. And like sometimes like your thoughts will be right. Like they'll probably always be well considered, but there's a lot of variables in the world that you just don't control and can't know. And like those tend to throw a wrench into your plans. And so if you sort of let yourself be led by the thing that is actually your goal, like if your goal is to build a business and make money and make customers happy, and you end up letting yourself be sort of led by where sales takes you, you will almost inherently make better decisions. I can give you a good example. So 2 episodes ago on the Indie Hackers podcast, I had a good friend of mine, Len, on, and she has a company, Key Values. And it's sort of like a job board for developers to basically choose a company based on like these like intangible company values. And she spent a while trying to sell this to companies, and like it didn't work that well. But she kept hearing these things like during her sales calls, like of how they were using it. And like eventually after like 12 sales calls, like people started saying yes because she was like changing her pitch. And like she was about to embark on like many months of like completely recoding her app and changing like a whole bunch of different stuff. But it turned out like she didn't need to code anything. She just needed to get her sales pitch down and figure out who her ideal customer was and like how they could use it. And like now she's making like many tens of thousands of dollars a month because she just refined her sales pitch. And so I think like it's very easy to get into this mindset where you're like, we need to build XYZ, we need to figure out who our customer is, et cetera. But like, honestly, if like you have people who seem like they're interested, like just try to sell. Like try to sell like for more money than you think, for example. Like, okay, your price point is $200. Try selling for $400. Maybe you'll get rejected 10 times, right? Maybe like 4 people will say yes, and you'll be like, oh crap, like these people are using our product in a way different way than we ever even dreamed of, because like, you know, we never sold to people in the segment before, right? Like you'll learn a lot by trying to do sales. I think it's like kind of always the safest option to start that way. So like that's kind of my bias. In terms of what you were talking about, that I talked to Harry about, like sort of thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. Like I did that with Indie Hackers because I knew that like I had this marketplace where I had to get a bunch of developers and founders and entrepreneurs on the site before I could sell to advertisers, right? So I couldn't just go straight to advertisers and be like, hey, will you advertise on my site that doesn't exist, right? With what you guys have, it's like, yeah, your product isn't super mature. It's a spreadsheet or, you know, I don't know how you described it, but it's like you guys are sort of like, I don't know, like Patrick Collison is always fond of saying that like Stripe in the early days was just sort of like 3 chipmunks in a trench coat, like pretending to be bigger than it was. Like that might be where you guys are, but like by all means, like get as far as you possibly can looking like that and working that way, and go until things break. Like if you can do that, then you're in a much better situation, and you'll spend like a lot fewer months sort of thrashing around doing the wrong thing. I think it's almost always better for your product to be sort of behind your sales than for your sales to be behind your product. Because like a sales call is like, it's a phone call, right? You can change what you say on a sales call in a day, but like product is like, that's many thousands of lines of code you're going to be writing that are very hard to change if you go in the wrong direction. Does this make sense? Is this helpful?
Yeah, definitely. That does make a lot of sense. I love that analogy from Patrick Collinson with the chipmunks.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe like what you were talking about in terms of, you know, just selling. I think like within that, even, I guess like right now we're targeting like 4 different customer segments. Do you think that it's best to like choose the one we think is going to be the best type of customer and just go hard at that? Or do you think it's still good to have like quite a broad approach? Because I guess we're getting to the stage where like, you know, we can focus on one thing or do a little bit of everything.
The right answer would be that I talk to you for like an hour and we go through like all the different customers and really try to figure it out. But we've got like 3 minutes left. I'll give you like a lazy answer. A lazy answer is like pick one. But it also depends on your sales process. Like if, like I was saying earlier, like the cool thing about sales, like if you're building something that's cheap enough that you can get on the phone and like sell it, and like that's not a waste of your time, or that's expensive enough, excuse me, that you can get on the phone and sell it, then like you're at such a huge advantage, because like it just costs nothing but your time and not very much time. So if like your sales cycle, like of identifying a customer and sort of like getting in contact with them and like having the requisite number of phone calls to like get them to like say yes is not that long, like you can really afford to test all of these segments. Like don't narrow yourself in, like really just try to sell to everybody and see what you hear and see what you learn. Some people might want you to build more features, etc. But if you're like in a situation where it's like actually doing all this takes months, you know, then like by all means, like pick one. That might be how I would decide.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of like, how do you value your time? I mean, I think like initially we're, you know, starting from zero and trying to get a few people on board. So, you know, technically the sales we've made this month aren't worth the past month of our time, but assuming, you know, that'll start to scale a little bit more.
Right.
Like, how do you know whether or not you're selling your product for a high enough price to do that?
You never know if you're selling your product for a high enough price. And I literally mean that. I mean, it's like Oracle is raising its prices every year, right? Like there's not going to come a time where it's like, is this like you've hit a wall? Like you'll hit a wall when customers stop buying, right? When people start churning because it's not worth it to them. But in the early stages, especially, like you're almost certainly not charging enough. You almost certainly will be able to charge more in the future. There's certain decisions you can make that I think are advantageous. Like I'm a big fan of annual pricing, especially if you're like running a side project and trying to quit your job, or you have quit your job and you're burning through savings. If you're on any sort of like limited time scale where you're like not already profitable, like sort of forcing customers to go to an annual plan will like massively increase your cash flow up front. And that allows you to do all sorts of different things. It allows you to like quit your job and focus on what you're doing full time much earlier. It allows you to hire much earlier so you can invest in your product. And so like that might be another thing I would test in your sales process. Like if you're not sure about the pricing, like instead of selling for like $200 a month, like tell people like, hey, this is, you know, you have to pay for a year. We'll give you 2 months free, but it's going to be, Like, I don't know what that is, $2,000 a year or something, right? And then you sell to like 5 customers, and like you don't have to ask if it's worth it. Like, they've covered your expenses for like, you know, the month, right? And you make 5 sales calls for the first week of the month, and then you work on your product for the rest of the month. Like, whatever you need to do. I think annual pricing is sort of a good hack for getting there faster.
All right, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Courtland. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Felix, for coming on. And there's like a lot there that we didn't talk about, but what you should do is you're on the forum, like go on the forum, make a post with like some of the challenges you're having, and just tag me, and I'll try to chime in with more. But like you've got like a lot of variables, and it seems like you've got like a lot of good problems to have.
Yeah, feels that way. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Lisette, you are next. I'm going to promote you here. All right. Lisette, you're in here. How's it going? I don't hear you. You might be muted. God, it's the AirPods. Everybody with the AirPods, you just can't hear.
Is it working?
Yes, there you are.
Test. Amazing.
How's
Thank you so much for doing this. This is so cool.
Yeah, thanks for
Going
joining.
well. Okay, so my dilemma is still fairly new. So I've just started working on this like the beginning of the week. And so I was wondering, can I do a screen share? And I think that might be more beneficial. Okay. Basically, it's a super simple tool that I made for myself primarily because I was annoyed with a tedious thing I was having to do with work. Oh, let's see, how does this work? Sorry, if I share this. There we go. Okay, so it's like a 10-second clip. That may or may not work.
Right. It says you're screen sharing, but all I see is black.
Does this show?
Cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So basically the problem that's being solved is having to manually fill in forms repeatedly with a lot of just the same information. So it's really simple that you would just be able to do a keyboard stroke to capture customer data. So it'd be like name, phone number, email, address, etc. And then just like instantly with another stroke or from your Google Chrome extension, paste it in. So I was using it to make labels on like shipping pages. So like UPS and FedEx and whatnot, and just doing it instantly. And it's beneficial, creates value for me.
Okay, so what is it copying again? Show me one more time.
Oh yeah, sorry. It was just copying the, oh, I'm really bad at this.
So you said it was copying phone numbers, or?
Yeah, so this is like part of the problem. It's like I haven't talked to anyone about this, so I don't know how it sounds out loud to folks, but essentially from my customer service role, which is what I am doing, you have this problem where if you need to manually make an order for someone, it's kind of tedious in that it takes you, you know, copying and pasting a lot of the different things that make up an order. So their name, their last name, their street address, their city, their zip code, all of like manually copying that. And then pasting it into, like, say you want to make a shipping label for them on UPS. You need to like go in and like manually do it. So up here, I don't know if you can like see this little mini Chrome extension.
Yeah.
You essentially, the idea is that you would copy data, save it to the clipboard, and then paste the data onto the form that you're trying to make. So just shave like a couple of seconds off your
Cool.
time there.
Cool.
Super, super simple. The value is pretty small. But I think that what I'm trying to figure out is like, is this too small even to like think about marketing or selling or creating value on top of? And does the idea even make sense? I didn't explain it well enough.
Okay. Number one, I think you're explaining the idea. For some reason, it's just like hard for me to get it. But
No, yeah.
I don't think that there's anything that's like too small to start with. In fact, I think starting small is almost always better because you can test out if you're going in the right direction much earlier, especially since you're building something for yourself. Like you're already using this yourself. You find it useful, right?
I do.
How long have you been using this for yourself?
A couple of weeks.
Okay. So the cool thing is like, number one, you can test because you're your own customer. Number two, you probably know other people like you. So you're doing customer support. Do you work alone? Do you have coworkers? Do you know other?
I work remotely, so I do. I should probably pitch it to the team. The next step.
Okay, so the thing is, like, you know other people, you know how you got your job, you know where you hang out. Like, what I would try to do is, like, as quickly as possible, get this in the hands of people who are like you and make sure that, like, their workflows are the same as yours and talk to them. Like, the downside to starting small is, like you said, like, okay, well, the value is kind of limited, right? Like, are people going to pay money for this? You're saving them a few seconds. It's, like, certainly helpful, but is it, like, helpful enough that they're like, I will pay you money for what you're doing? Like, maybe not. But like, if you end up talking to a bunch of other customer service reps, they have similar workflows to you, but they're slightly different. You might uncover different tools you can build. And like, let's say you had like a suite of tools and they're all like these miniature tools, but there's like 10 of them. And like combined, they save you like an hour a day. Like, I will pay money for that, right? And so like, I think starting small is good. At, like, that helps you sort of iterate, but like, you have to put pressure on sort of like actually getting this in people's hands and like having them use it and talking to them and trying to figure out like where you can go from here. So do you have any ideas of like how you might like get this out?
I do. And I guess like I've started already with that, which was I compiled a list of e-commerce customer support emails. And I think I sent out a total of about 40 emails with like a very basic pitch on what it is. All I have up right now is like a landing page with a demo video and basic text. So I assumed it was like 100% email open rate, of course, because it's going to customer service line. So they're definitely going to open it. But I think the incentive to like download a Chrome extension from like a random person reaching out on CX isn't there. And I know that because I usually just close out spammy emails like that myself. So as far as like finding channels, I guess for distribution, that's maybe the challenge as well, or maybe just starting with I don't know, coworkers and seeing if they use it. I think I was just shy to like share the tool because it's definitely still buggy. And I don't want to invest too much time in it, but.
Okay. So,
I don't know what my question is outside of this is rough.
Cold emails are tough. It's like a really tough sales channel, especially for something like a Chrome extension. Really hard. That doesn't mean that like you should get discouraged though. Like, if at all possible, like I would try to talk to someone on the phone. The thing about talking to somebody on the phone is like, number one, like they have to respond because it's awkward if they don't. They can't just do you like once you're on the phone. Number two, you get like a back and forth going where you can ask lots of questions, and you might have like in the span of one phone conversation like 10 times more back and forth than you'll have over email or chat. And so like it's like a higher fidelity way to talk to people. And like, since you have the same job as people, like it doesn't even necessarily need to be like, hey, let me pitch you my product on the phone. It can be like, hey, like we're customer support people, let's just talk about our jobs. Or like, I want to learn how you do something at your job, and like I want to show you what I do. Like, people like talking to people who have the same job as them, especially if you're remote and like there are other remote customer service people who like don't ever talk to anyone who does what they like, do what they do. Like, I don't know like the exact way to do it, but like if I were you, I would sort of put a priority on like being able to talk to customers who are doing what you do, and just like having conversations and just be like sort of exploratory. Like, what do they need? What do they care about? Like, what is like the pain point of their day? Once you get them like sort of talking to you and you guys are like kind of friends, like they'll probably try out whatever you built just to try it out because it's a friendly thing to do and you'll get some feedback on it. But just as importantly, you'll get like other information for other things you might be able to build. And you might not even need that. Like, you might already have enough like little challenges in your day, or you already have like ideas for how you could take this Chrome extension and make it better. There are also like a lot of other Chrome extensions that have functionality that like might be useful. And I know like the most popular thing in the world is like you need to build an app that's, you know, its own unique snowflake that doesn't, you know, in any way copy anybody else. But like, I think that's overrated. And a lot of times there are tools that are popular in one world that like another world doesn't know anything about. And so, for example, like in the world of like Chrome extensions, there are like all sorts of like tools that sit in your inbox that will tell you like who an email is from, or whether or not somebody has read your email or opened it, or all sorts of stuff like that. I don't know if customer support agents like need that or use it, but like it's quite possible they don't. Like, you could sort of like copy features from these apps and put them into your app, and like now you have a much more substantial thing that's sort of like an all-in-one tool, and like the value proposition is much higher.
No, that's really good feedback, because I think I'm like really into like the techie tools, but I don't necessarily think that most customer service reps are. But finding a way to just like become friends with them and sharing like that passion with them is excellent advice. So thank you. That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned earlier your friend Lynn from Key Values was able to like refine her pitch over time from talking to people. Is there any advice or suggestions that you'd give to get better at communicating ideas that we have, or honing in on what you should be focusing on to sell better?
So like, honestly, the advice I would give you is kind of what I just said, which is like the advantage that she had was she was always talking on the phone.
Just talking.
Talking on the phone is just so great because people like no one wants to be an asshole. Like no one wants to be super awkward. Like if they say no on the phone, like they're going to go into detail about why and what it would take to get them to say yes. They'll just share all sorts of information that like they just won't share over email or over chat or over Twitter or other channels. And so I think that was super helpful for her. Number two, she like spent a decent amount of time giving away her product for free. And then she would talk to like users and try to upgrade them. So it wasn't like cold call, who are you? Try using my thing. It was like, hey, you've been on my thing for like 6 months. Like, will you pay me now? And they're just like, no. But like, here's where we are finding value. And here's what we kind of like. And it turned out like, profiles that she was creating, like for specific examples, like she was saying, she's basically trying to like charge companies for hiring engineers. So it'd be like, oh yeah, you hired engineers via my platform. You should pay me, X dollars per head. But like the feedback that she was hearing was like, oh, we're sending out our profile to engineers that we're trying to hire. And like, we're getting higher open rates on those emails because people like our profile. Or like somebody applied to us and they asked why we didn't have a profile. And we just wanted a profile because we look bad without one. Right. And she's like, oh, this is like more of like a status prestige thing rather than like a converting engineers into like, potential hires into hires thing. So like maybe I need to like focus on that set of features. So I think that's like a great, it's like almost textbook example of how talking to your customers can help. And for her, it's because like they were already using her for free and because she was on the phone having these like very high fidelity conversations.
Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me test out my mini pitch. This is cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah, best of luck. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Courtland. Later.
All right. Last but not least, Subro, I'm going to make you a panelist. Where'd you go? There you are. All right, Subro, you're on. Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know what you're working on? I can't hear you. It might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. 7 a.m. in India.
Morning.
Yeah, good morning. So thanks a lot for taking out the time. I've been following indie hackers for some time now, although a bit of an unconventional background. So I started my career practicing law and then shifted to venture capital. So that is during the transition is when I discovered indie hacker.
Cool.
Tried building a SaaS product myself. So that's when I sort of discovered indie hacker. So,
nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in and tell you about what we are trying to do. So when I was doing my shift from law to VC, one of the things that I realized is a lot of lawyers want to quit their job. I mean, and that feeling is mutual. I mean, it's there in the US, it's there in India. People like corporate lawyers more or less tend to hate law. They wanted to get out. But the thing is, very few had an idea of what they wanted to do.
Right.
I mean, in terms of what professions can you get into? So I would think like in a developed economy like the US, like choices are a bit more, right? Because it's a developed economy. In India, it's even lesser because that information exchange is not there. So I started personally talking to a lot of people as to what can we do. And I started discovering that lawyers were doing things other than law. There were lawyers who were product managers, there were lawyers who were VCs, there were lawyers who were designers, lawyers who were entrepreneurs. And I thought, okay, why not make a collective of all these guys? And started with a WhatsApp group and we were exchanging information, mostly jobs, what can people do? And the thing is, because it was a small group, people started recommending each other for jobs. Hey, you know what, let's say McKinsey has an opening and I'll recommend you for the opening as a business analyst, even though you're a lawyer, right? And then this was an ex-lawyer who had gone into McKinsey. So that started happening. Now, and then we understood that, okay, there's potential in this. We got our first 150 users and these were all people who had shifted out of law. And we understood, okay, there is some potential in this. Let's shift to a platform. And the biggest problem we are facing right now is WhatsApp cannot grow. Facebook usage is down. Instagram doesn't have groups. And like if I create a forum like Indie Hackers for myself, will people use it?
Yeah.
Right. That's a big question. The second is, what are the monetization opportunities for something like this? In the sense, I did some amount of market research and I figured that A, people were selling courses, or B, people were like, charging people to post jobs. But like both of those things don't really work over here because again, India being a very value conscious market, you have to show an actual result for the course, which is like, hey, you give me X number of dollars, so you end up getting a job, which will like, it's not like a self-actualization type of market. It's a very value driven market.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I just would love to hear your thoughts on that, on those two questions.
Number one, I think that's a good thing. I like value driven markets, because then it's just like a better North Star for like why people are buying what you're doing. And I think you generally feel better if you know you're providing value for people. But like, let's rewind to the beginning part of it. First thing is like, everybody in your community is on WhatsApp, and you're listing some problems with other channels. I want to like go through some of these problems. So Facebook usage is down. You mean like global Facebook usage, or like you guys already have like a Facebook group and like you're...
No. I was talking about global Facebook usage, in the sense that people are slowly moving out of Facebook. And I know a lot of these people who are like really successful entrepreneurs. So a lot of these people, for example, ex-lawyers who are like CEOs of big companies, I am not sure they will be like even if they are on Facebook, they won't be on a Facebook group, because I mean, WhatsApp is a bit more, is a bit more personal. And I know that they will use it on a day-to-day basis, because it's very like, the frequency of usage is much higher on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So I know at least that they're seeing the post, if nothing else, even if they're not reacting to it.
Yeah. I think WhatsApp is a really cool medium for a group, because it's like on your phone, it's mobile, it's always pinging you, like for the reasons that you said.
Correct. Yeah.
I've never started a Facebook group. Like, my bias is like towards like, I don't care what the global trends are. It's still humongous. And if the value you're providing for your platform is big enough, like people will get on Facebook just for that. And so like, I would say that you should evaluate it more based on whether or not you think Facebook is like the right group software for what you're trying to do. And that might not be the case. So I was talking to someone earlier, I don't know if you heard, but like he also has like a community of like book club. And like, one of the tough things about a community is like, as it grows, you try to like find like a bigger and bigger container to sort of fit all these people into, like, it just becomes personal. And like, a lot of the value from a community is like the personal connections. And so you think about like in-person communities, like there's a community of people who like run together. There actually is one of these in like New York City where like 100 people will go and like show up at the same corner every Saturday and like go on a run. Like, they all get to talk to each other and know each other and recognize each other. And like, in your WhatsApp group, it's probably very similar. And so like, it might be tempting to scale to like some sort of big thing, but like, honestly, like you might even consider doing something. I know this sounds like kind of crazy, but it's like, maybe the way you scale is like laterally, and you just like have multiple WhatsApp groups. Yeah. Cause it's like one of the things that I'm like thinking about with Indie Hackers is like, I have this huge website and everyone's in the same sort of like big space, but because everybody's in the same space, like they don't really know each other and you can't really form a connection. So it's like, how do I break people out into smaller spaces? It's like, I'm going the opposite direction of you.
Correct. Got it.
I think there's a lot to be said for like these smaller spaces where it's like, if you have like 100 people and they're really active and talking to each other, like that's a good thing. And like, maybe you don't need to mess with that. Maybe you need to start like another group of 100 people or 2 groups of 50 and let those bubble up. I don't use WhatsApp a ton, so like, I don't know what like logistics would be of like managing that type of group as like you being the community leader. But as a member, like, it doesn't really matter as long as you just get slotted into one WhatsApp group and like you see the same people over and over again. Like, that's super helpful. Alternatives, like if you really do want everybody to be sort of in the same place, I think you shouldn't worry too much about an exodus, because like, quite frankly, like you're going to lose some people in the transition. I know people who run communities. Like, I know a guy who ran a community of marketers, and he had it like in Skype. It was like a Skype based community. And once it got to like 200 people, they had to move it onto the website, and he moved it. And like, what happened was he lost like 2/3 of his group, because it's like, he couldn't really message everybody, but it's like, he had to do that and he regrets not starting somewhere else. But it's like, that was it. He was up against the limit, and it's like his hand was sort of forced. And just like kind of rebuilt from scratch. Like, it wasn't a pretty thing, but like, it was a thing he had to do. And I kind of see the same thing like over and over. Like, I interview a lot of entrepreneurs who like, they'll get like a third-party service to write their app from scratch. And then they like market and launch. And then like every single time, like 2 weeks after they launch, they have to like scrap their app and like rebuild it because it's crappy. But it's like, they needed that to get to like the first level, even though they had to sort of take a step back after taking 2 steps forward. So like, for your situation, like, honestly, if like people are really power users of your community and they love what you're doing, like they will probably transition. The people who like only kind of sort of find value in it, like probably won't. And if you're really adamant, like you need to be in a bigger space, like that's not a choice. Like you have to make that choice. Like there's nothing.
Correct. Understood. Understood. So I think I'll just add a follow-on point to that, which is one thing I'm trying to do is while I'm keeping the communication on WhatsApp because people are very used to communicating over WhatsApp, what I'm doing is shifting, like posting jobs online. So make a website for that and make a job board for that.
Yeah.
So mass dissemination will be through the website, but conversations would still remain on WhatsApp. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Like if WhatsApp can support all the conversations, then you should do that for sure. And like, even if you wanted to transition off of like sort of having two things in different places, like if you can condition people to go to the website for specific resources, you know, and then like one day the website happens to have a discourse forum and that's where you also go to chat, like that's also good.
Correct.
It's probably better to do it that way than to do some sort of like mass, you know, transition.
Yeah, correct. So the second question being on the monetizations, like, you know, advertisements, or should we go like sell courses? Or one of the things that we thought was, okay, people transitioning, maybe people want to do MBAs, can we sell MBA coaching or something of that sort? But does that work in the long run?
Coaching definitely works. I mean, I don't know about MBA coaching in particular, but I do know that like in terms of like selling, like I usually tell people, okay, what you want to do is sell to businesses because businesses have more money to spend and businesses are like in general like better at like valuing their dollars and how their dollars that they spend make them more money. Consumers are hard to sell to you, but there are a few things where consumers like are willing to shell out like a lot of money because they see the value. And like one of those things has always been education. And people will pay a lot of money for education because they can like immediately grasp like what the return on their investment will be. Like you were saying earlier, like, oh, we're going to get you a job or we're going to help you do whatever. So for your particular audience, it seems like what do they want? They want to start a business?
No. So basically that's the thing, the discovery. So we made a directory. So because it was a learning process for us also, we made a directory of what were people doing. So we understood people were doing, let's say, public policy, or people were doing venture capital, right? Mm-hmm. And we thought, okay, one way to do it is jobs, but the second way requires actual reskilling. Now that is where you need education. So for example, if you're a lawyer, you want to go into business, mm-hmm. you definitely maybe need to get an MBA of some sort, because that skill is just not present. Because I mean, you're not mathematically sound enough to go ahead and like, you know, get a business role. So education is one way to shift, jobs are another. So everyone wants to shift out. They don't know what they want to do. That's the thing.
There's no like common thread. There's no like a lot of people want to be founders or a lot of people want to.
No, so these are a lot of the common thread is these are a lot of lawyers who want to get out of law. Like that's why they come over here, because they don't know what to do.
Everyone's running away from law, but they're not running to a particular thing. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what connects them. But the good part is, so we started a series of podcasts with the people who have already run out of law. Mm-hmm. And that sort of gives perspective to all these people. Hey, you know, X number of people are doing product management after law. How do you actually go on that path? So that sort of helps them out.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the two areas that you've identified are like pretty good, like courses and jobs. Almost everybody that I know who has a community is either monetizing through like one of those two, like education, jobs, or like advertising. For you, advertising, like it's just not probably in the cards because of like you have a smaller group. It's not like you're trying to reach like millions of lawyers. Jobs can be hard. You can make it work because like especially if like these are like high skilled lawyers, like they probably are going to get high paying jobs. But like the problem I think that you're really going to be working with is that like if everybody is going towards different things, then it's really hard for you to have any sort of streamlined process by which you, like if you were like, if everyone wanted, like every lawyer wanted to be an engineer, then it's like, you could literally hire a recruiter who works in-house with you and you're like, hey, I've got a lot of potential engineers, like, can you place them? And like that recruiter can like.
Correct, understood.
Right. Understood. So what I would say, like in your situation, like I might try to be a little prescriptive, especially since like people trust you and like you're able to like bring in like people for meetups and like do these podcast interviews with like successful lawyers. Like if you think there's a particular path that's like really lucrative and that like lawyers are well suited to do, whether that's coding or business or like any like marketing, who knows, like maybe be prescriptive and be like, we're going to sort of guide you down this path. And like that might require like in some ways, like turning off some of your audience. But I think a lot of ways, like being prescriptive about like what you do and who you target will help you build a bigger audience. So if you're like, we're no longer just like lawyers not lawyering, but we are now lawyers who code, right? Like some of your lawyer like attorneys will feel a little bit left out, but like at the same time, like there's probably a lot of lawyers who aren't even part of your group who are like, oh, that's cool. Let's using language that like I understand, like code, like I've been interested in this for a while. And then like much easier for you to do like jobs.
Understood. I got that. Understood.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that really helps. So I think both the questions really helps. Cool. I think that was great. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Best of luck. Let me know if you I like talking to other people who build communities. So
Sure.
It's there's a lot of good stuff. I'll send you if you make a post on the forum and tag me, I'll send you a couple books on the community.
Sure. That'd be great.
Seems like one of these things that everyone starts a community. It's like we're all like, oh, I have no idea how to do this, no playbook. But it's like there's a lot of people who started communities, and they have like really good indicators of things you should look at and try doing that make your community healthier. And like I'm just in the process of discovering this stuff like 2 years in. So ping me and I'll send you some stuff.
Cool. Great.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for coming on. And that's it. That's everybody. I can't believe we got through the end of it. Well, I'm going to stay on for a little bit. I see like 3 of you guys are still in the chat. I said I would open up the video calls if everybody wants to talk to each other, unless people left. But if you are watching this on YouTube, thanks so much for watching. We're going to be doing like, ideally at some point, like 3 or 4 of these a week with different founders and experts. And so if you go to indiehackers.com/office-hours, you will be able to sign up for a session. And if you don't see anybody there, just like email me and recommend somebody, and I'll try my best to get them to host sessions. But until next time, thanks so much for tuning in.